Henry's company went under, and he found himself out of a job. He begged his uncle and managed to get a position at his uncle's company. A year later, I received a message on my cell phone from Henry's mistress, along with a selfie of them together. "Hi, I'm Henry's mistress. Can't wait to live together." I ignored the message, but when I returned from work the next day, I found most of our furniture gone. A note left on the kitchen counter, written in Henry's handwriting, read, "Move to Nora's place." I called Henry. "Where are you? Should we hire you?" A sweet voice answered, "Probably Nora's. Would you like to work for us?" She seemed to be under a big misunderstanding. "Sure, if you're hiring a maid for $15.60 an hour, then I guess it's time to divorce my husband." Talk in your sleep. Ah, she really knows nothing. Poor thing. I told her I'd contact her once the divorce preparations were complete, then I hung up. Just you wait. I'll knock you down from the peak of happiness to the depths of despair soon. My name is Madison, a 50-year-old housewife. I work at my uncle's company. I met my husband of 20 years, Henry, at a gathering of friends. I thought he was a wonderful person, and after he spoke to me as we were leaving, we started dating after meeting a couple of times. It seems Henry lost his father when he was in middle school, but his mother's family is wealthy. After graduating from a prestigious university and working for a major corporation, his demeanor always showed that he was comfortable, both emotionally and financially. Thanks to this, Henry always took great care of me. For anniversaries, he would prepare presents, lavish dinners, hotels with beautiful night views, and even bouquets of flowers. I was over the moon with such princess-like treatment. When we decided to marry, I was thrilled, thinking I could build a happy home with him. Little did I know, I would soon regret it. It was easy to imagine his mother, who had lived alone with her son since his middle school days, interfering in our married life. However, the mother-in-law living in the next town never visited our apartment and didn't rush us to visit her. She said she was busy with theater, traveling with friends, or concerts. Hearing this, I felt relieved. When I got pregnant, both the mother-in-law and Henry were more delighted than I was, savoring the happiness. But then, dark clouds began to loom over our marriage. Henry started going out every weekend. Even when I was bedridden with morning sickness, he'd casually go off to skiing, camping, or resort trips. "It's odd to leave the house empty every weekend when you're married," I complained. Henry just tilted his head. "It's impossible to take a pregnant Madison along." "Oh. Then should I invite people over, like 5 or 6 each week?" Henry's face lit up. "That way, Madison would have fun too. For a barbecue, everyone could bring their own vegetables and meat. It would definitely distract you," he said, leaving me speechless. Knowing I can't eat because of nausea, and he says this? "It's obviously impossible," I shouted, and Henry frowned in displeasure. "What's wrong with going out on my own dime on weekends?" "I'm not saying don't go, but you're not single anymore. I just wish you'd be more considerate." Henry showed even more signs of annoyance. "That's all on you, Madison." "What?" "I'm providing a comfortable life for you, and you're not grateful enough. I'm working for both of us, so you should be more devoted to me. You're my wife, after all." With that arrogant declaration, he grabbed his suitcase and left the house. Listening to the car engine fade away, I slumped into the sofa, feeling depressed. I understand Henry's point. But leaving a pregnant wife at home, wandering around with juniors late on weekdays, and going out with single friends every weekend, isn't that questionable? He just can't shake off his bachelor mindset. Will he develop a sense of fatherhood when our child is born next year? I had no choice but to believe he would change. Eventually, a boy was safely born. Henry and I named him Elijah, and he grew up healthily. "Please don't come to the maternity hospital," Henry had conveyed to his mother, so I had a peaceful time in the hospital room. However, the backlash was tremendous. After being discharged, the mother-in-law came to my apartment multiple times with her friends. The first time was right after I had finally put Elijah to sleep. Just as I sat down on the sofa to rest, the doorbell rang, making my heart jump. When I checked the door monitor, there was the mother-in-law and several older women. Reluctantly unlocking the door, the mother-in-law and her friends stormed in, headed straight for the living room, and rushed to the crib.
Oh, how cute!
Right?
Looks just like Henry.
Really? I'm not so sure.
You're just sun crazy. Oh, he's waking up.
Elijah, who had been dozing off, immediately started crying.
Madison, hurry up and soothe him. It's pitiful to let him cry so much. And tea, please. Some tea and snacks would be great.
While holding back my irritation, I picked up Elijah and soothed him. The mother-in-law and her friends surrounded me, poking Elijah's cheek and stroking his head like he was a pet.
It's nice, isn't it? I want grandchildren soon too.
I have 2 daughters. I keep telling my daughter-in-law to give me a grandson next. Listening to their conversation, the mother-in-law looked smug. The mother-in-law and her friends came like a storm, chatted, ate snacks beside me soothing Elijah, and then left. When I complained to Henry after he came back from work, he surprisingly smiled.
Mom just wanted to show off her grandchild to her friends. It's cute what she's doing.
I recoiled in shock.
You know, I'm just 3 days post-discharge. I'm staggering around, breastfeeding every 2 hours, and doing housework.
Huh? His indifferent response frustrated me.
It took another 2 hours to put Elijah back to sleep. I really wish you'd ask your mom to stop these unannounced visits.
At my plea, Henry visibly showed his displeasure.
Mom and her friends came all this way to celebrate. Instead of being grateful, why are you complaining?
I became increasingly frustrated with Henry's inability to understand. I should have gone back to my parents' house, even if it meant hours by plane and train. My parents live with my brother and his wife, who also have a young child, so I hesitated to intrude.
Henry, you're not involved in childcare at all, so you wouldn't understand. Can you please take care of Elijah once in a while?
I pleaded earnestly.
Like, just stay home with Elijah for an hour on the weekend. I'd like to go to the salon or relax at a cafe for a bit.
So, you want to slack off from your motherly duties? Henry laughed as if it was absurd.
Every mother raises their kids on their own. If you can't, you're a failure as a mother. That's harsh. Don't say things like that.
It's the truth. He retorted sharply, glaring at me.
To think you'd want to waste my precious weekend. I'm providing for you. Isn't that enough? If you want to be pampered, go back to your parents' house and never come back.
He threw those cold words at me before heading to the bathroom. Left alone in the room, I wiped my eyes, and perhaps sensing my mood, Elijah began to fuss. Holding and soothing Elijah, I felt utterly dejected. How could someone so kind change so much? Or maybe, this was his true nature all along. Eventually, I began to think, in a way, my mother-in-law might be better than Henry. She shows interest in Elijah, playing with him and talking to him. Henry was strangely indifferent towards Elijah. Only after my persistent requests did he agree to bathe Elijah on weekends, but he refused to do any other caregiving. Even when in the same room, Henry would bury himself in his mobile games. When Elijah crawled over to him, Henry would shoo him away as if annoyed. Whether Elijah laughed in his sweet voice or babbled in baby talk, Henry remained indifferent. Could such a person ever become a fatherly figure? I felt overwhelmed by anxiety, even though parenting had just begun. As Elijah turned 3, the repeated visits from my mother-in-law with different friends each time finally stopped. It seemed her interest waned as Elijah began to express his own opinions and his cuteness diminished in her eyes. Enjoying the peace at last, I negotiated with Henry.
I want to start working. There seems to be a spot available at the nearby daycare.
Why?
My salary should be enough for us.
Henry turned visibly unhappy.
A wife should stay at home and take care of me and the kid.
I almost laughed at his outdated mindset but pleaded with feigned submission.
I want to save for Elijah's college fund. I'll work part-time, so can you agree to it? Of course not. I won't allow you to skimp on household duties. I plan to work at my uncle's company.
Henry smirked.
What, a nepotism hire? They need a female secretary.
Oh, really?
Well, it's just a small, insignificant company that could go under at any moment, but do your best, I guess.
His mocking tone irritated me, and I pursed my lips.
We also do business with your company. Then tell them to make sure they don't cause any trouble for my company.
Henry responded, his words dripping with condescension, despite being just a section manager. It infuriated me. I resolved to work hard, save up, and eventually divorce this man. With that secret hope, I threw myself into my work. As Elijah grew and it became possible to balance work with household chores, I switched to a full-time position and dove even deeper into my career. One evening, Henry came home looking dejected and slumped into the dining chair.
Welcome home. What's wrong? Our company's going under. What? It's bankrupt.
I quickly checked my phone and saw that Henry's workplace was indeed in the news. As I stared in disbelief, Henry looked down uncomfortably. I had seen news of the company's declining performance, but I hadn't expected it to go bankrupt.
What are we going to do? Guess I'll have to find a job at another company,
he said resignedly, throwing his commuter bag on the floor. I was on the verge of panic. We could live on my salary alone, but saving would be difficult. For now, I decided to dip into the divorce fund I had secretly saved to cover Elijah's college expenses. Henry, who had strutted around at home, had been bringing in a substantial income. So this loss was a heavy blow. All we could do was hope he'd find another job as soon as possible. However, Henry's diligent job hunting lasted only the first month. Soon after, he fell into a routine of staying up late and sleeping in, leading a slack lifestyle. I was also not okay with Henry keeping all his savings for himself without contributing to the household. Watching him play mobile games on the couch while I cooked and cleaned nearly drove me to rage.
Hey, shouldn't you start looking for a job seriously? You're almost 40. It might get hard to find the job you want after that.
I gently prodded him. He snapped back.
Cut it out. I'm looking on job sites. But I've never seen you writing a resume. I'm carefully selecting a company worthy of me.
Henry boasted arrogantly.
I graduated from a top university. Working for some mediocre company would lower my standards. You, coming from a third-rate background, wouldn't understand.
Oh, is that so? We repeated such exchanges countless times, and before we knew it, 10 years had passed. As Elijah approached college entrance exams, studying day and night, Henry, in his sweats and stubble, was still glued to his games. I considered divorcing him several times. Since Henry's mother's family was wealthy, he wouldn't be left destitute if I left him, but the thought of abandoning my jobless husband felt morally wrong, so I hesitated, and the years flew by. Finally, out of desperation, I decided to use my connections. I begged my uncle to hire Henry. Luckily, they were looking for someone to handle sales in the branch office of the next town over. It was a perfect match.
Hey, how about working at my uncle's company?
I approached Henry one night, my heart pounding.
When I mentioned your qualifications, they said it would be a waste not to have you.
Of course, that was a big lie, but Henry, ever so proud, took the bait.
Well, a high-level guy like me won't be found just anywhere in small businesses. They'd be dying to have me,
Henry said, not entirely displeased with himself.
So, should I go ahead and discuss it with them?
I wonder what I should do. He mused, feigning indecision until his eyes glued to the mobile screen I had opened.
Oh, this? It's from when we did the exhibition for our new product. Huh. Looks fun,
he muttered, reminiscing with a nostalgic look.
I guess I could work at your company. Really? That's great. But, since it's been a while, I'd like to work only 3 days a week and make sure I can leave on time.
he bargained. I was at a loss for words.
As you know, our company has a strict Monday through Friday schedule, and end of month or busy seasons require overtime. Special treatment might be difficult.
Henry's eyes widened in annoyance.
Look, I'm getting back to work after a long break. It's like rehabilitation. And you want me to start with long hours right away? Is it okay if I, being so delicate, get sick?
His words irked me. Over these 10 years, I've balanced full-time work, childcare, and household chores to support you, haven't I? However, not wanting to upset him further, I swallowed the complaint that was on the tip of my tongue. After consulting with my uncle, Henry was hired as a part-time worker at a lower hourly rate than the market average, finally breaking free from a decade of unemployment. Henry, back at work, quickly began to thrive. Seeing him clean-shaven and in a suit warmed my heart. Despite a receding hairline and a less fit body, he seemed to regain some of his youthful vigor. The day he could work vigorously like before might not be far off. Then, I could ask him to contribute to household expenses again. Relieved, I began to wonder how he spent his 4 days off. On Henry's days off, he was invariably gone by the time I returned from work. Often coming back late smelling of alcohol, possibly hinting at frequent visits to nightclubs, though I wondered how he could afford it on his meager salary. Sometimes, his clothes carried the scent of women's perfume, which was suspicious. If it were nightclubs, the smells would mix, but it was always the same scent. A year after he restarted working, an unknown number sent me a photo and message on my phone. It was an image of Henry cozied up on a bed with a heavily made-up woman. Recognizing her as Nora Farrell, a hostess who had attended our company's product launch, shocked me.
Hi, I'm Henry's mistress. Can't wait to live together.
Although stunned, I wasn't deeply hurt. Any affection for Henry had long since faded. So, he had been cheating after all, I sighed. Perhaps he had scoped out Nora from the photos saved on the company computer, wooed her, and started an affair. Staring at the picture, anger bubbled up inside me. After getting hired through my connections, how could he dare to do this? Calling Henry only led to endless ringing, and my furious messages went unread. That night, Henry didn't come home. Moreover, he began skipping work without notice.
Skipping work for your mistress? What are you thinking? You'll lose the job you finally got.
I sent during lunch break, but as usual, there was no response. Returning home in turmoil, I found the room oddly spacious. Scanning the interior, I noticed all the furniture was gone. The Scandinavian-style sofa set, wooden table, two-seater dining table, stylish shelves, and chic TV stand. All purchased with my salary. Standing dumbfounded, I spotted a piece of paper on the floor in the center of the room. Written in round handwriting alongside Henry's, it read,
"I'm taking Henry. I've moved to Nora's place. Don't bother trying to get me back."
I crumpled the note and called Henry again. The moment it connected, I was ready to scream.
What do you think you're doing? Where are you? You sound so flustered. It's hilarious.
A nasal, sweet voice, probably Nora's, responded.
Should we hire you? Excuse me? If you're okay with being a maid, I'll give you the address.
I almost burst out laughing at her haughty tone. Nora seemed to be under a big misunderstanding.
Then it's time to divorce my husband, making $15.60 an hour.
Talk in your sleep. She scoffed. Ah, she really knows nothing. Poor thing. Holding back laughter, I pleaded in a pathetic voice. I'll be in trouble if Henry leaves me. How am I supposed to live now? Nora burst into laughter on the other end of the phone.
You were living off Henry, weren't you? It must be miserable being a housewife who's lost her husband's affection.
It's tough, but I don't want to be disliked by Henry any more than I already am. Please tell Henry I'll call him once the divorce preparations are complete. That's very understanding of you. By then. After hanging up, I clenched my teeth. Enough of making a fool of me. Watch and see. I'll bring you down from the peak of happiness to the depths of despair. So I vowed in my heart. After revealing the situation to my uncle, I decided to get Henry fired and teach both him and Nora a lesson they'd never forget. I hired a detective agency for an investigation and did as much research as possible on Henry and Nora myself. 2 weeks later, I messaged Henry.
I want to discuss our divorce. Please come to our house with Nora.
He too showed up at the agreed time, hand in hand, smirking as if to flaunt their relationship to me. After inviting them into the living room, Nora sneered.
You haven't even bought new furniture? You're really broke, huh? Well, being a parasite on big company worker Henry, I guess it can't be helped. Excuse me? You stole our furniture, and you have the nerve to say that? I could report you to the police, you know. Oh, please, how scandalous. I simply brought the furniture I bought with me when I moved. Just as Henry told me, you're not too bright, are you?
As Nora expressed her disdain, I turned my gaze to Henry, who awkwardly averted his eyes from me. It's clear he's just trying to impress Nora. When we replaced the old furniture, Henry was unemployed, and my salary was all we relied on. Telling such an easily exposed lie, who's really the foolish one here? Internally fuming, I addressed Henry. You feel the same way as I do, don't you? You want a divorce, right?
Yeah.
Henry nodded grimly.
I'm sick of taking care of a middle-aged woman with a figure like yours.
He spat out spitefully.
Meeting Nora made me realize everything that hasn't gone right in the 20 years since we got married is all your fault.
I couldn't believe my ears. That was supposed to be my line.
Being with you brought my luck down. So, I'm divorcing you to restart my life.
Then, he made his demand.
What?
Alimony.
You've been a nuisance throughout our 20 years of marriage, right?
Henry, full of himself, declared.
I'm generous, so I'll settle for $200,000.
Come on, hand it over.
You can even give me your bank account details, I'll withdraw it myself.
His arrogant tone made me feel more sad than angry. So, he's resorting to begging me for money because he can't afford to live with Nora on his current salary. High pride, yet stooping so low for money. Fine.
Living with 5 people must be expensive, after all. Really? You okay with that?
His eyes lit up before he puzzled. 5 people? I explained with a smile. Yes, that's right. Nora and her 3 kids.
Let's see, from oldest to youngest, they're in 8th grade, 6th grade, and 5 years old, right?
All girls, if I recall correctly. Nora's face drained of color. Henry, looking confused, glanced back and forth between me and Nora, showing his bewilderment.
Wait, kids? Divorced I knew, but kids are news to me. Nora, she's saying this stuff.
Henry said, his voice trailing off as Nora clammed up, her silence confirming everything.
Seriously? You're kidding.
Henry muttered in disappointment, obviously having been told by Nora that she didn't have children. I pulled out an envelope given to me by the detective agency, spread the investigation report and a bunch of photos on the floor, showing Nora with the kids. Tough ages, but good luck, Henry. I said, lacing my encouragement with sarcasm.
Considering you've declared your dislike for kids and dumped all childcare on me, refusing to bond with your own son, I'm curious if you'll manage to endear yourself to someone else's children. It'll be fine. Look, they all resemble cute Nora, so I'm sure I'll come to like them.
Henry forced a smile and held Nora's hand. Nora, looking up, remained uneasy. Just then, the doorbell rang, and my mother-in-law's voice came through the intercom, causing Henry to freeze.
Why is Mom coming? When I told her about the divorce due to your affair, she insisted on being here.
With that, Henry's face soured. Opening the door, my mother-in-law barged in, pushing past me and storming into the living room to berate Nora.
You thief!
Nora widened her eyes in shock, but quickly put on a smile for my mother-in-law.
Mother, their marriage has been over for a long time. So, that term you used is incorrect. Yes, you are. You stole my precious son from me.
My mother-in-law pointed an accusing finger at Nora, spitting her words out.
A plain wife, a flashy mistress with kids? Henry has no taste in women.
Henry hung his head as he was scolded.
And on top of that, 3 daughters? Fooled by some makeup-laden failure who can't even produce a son? Without mom, you always fall for the worst women.
Henry looked up, weakly trying to defend.
Don't talk bad about Nora, Mom. Her ex was the loser. I promise, if she remarries me, she'll bear an heir. Right, Nora? Yes.
Nora grimaced, as my mother-in-law glared at her venomously.
Trust that? If you're remarrying the mistress, take Elijah back. Then, I might consider approving.
Henry frowned helplessly.
I don't want that kid. He's terrible at online games and doesn't warm up to me at all. Not cute whatsoever.
His selfish statement infuriated me. He had hardly played with him since he was young, always shooing him away, so it's a natural outcome. Mother, taking back Elijah is impossible. I couldn't help but interject.
Be quiet, you're not part of this.
The kid's already 19 years old. He's living in a college dorm now. He's very independent and plans to live on his own after graduation.
I won't allow such selfish actions. As the heir, it's only natural he returns to his father's family after the divorce.
My mother-in-law's eyes bulged. That was a new rule to me. As usual, talking to my mother-in-law was getting me nowhere fast.
Henry.
Nora timidly tugged at Henry's sleeve after a moment of silence.
What is it, Nora?
Henry's affectionate smile only fueled my anger.
If it's Henry's child, I'm sure it'll be adorable. But that means we'll have 4 kids. Can we afford that?
A legitimate concern, to which Henry confidently responded.
Don't worry, Nora. As I've told you, my family is wealthy. Plus, as a department head in a large corporation, I have a high income. Marrying me means you're set for life.
Nora beamed at those words.
I'm so happy. Then I don't have to work at the nightclub anymore. Being a companion was getting tough because of my age. You've had it rough. From now on, I'll take care of you, so relax.
Henry declared, hugging Nora. I felt nauseous at the sight. All the lies and not a shred of guilt? The guests I invited must have felt the same. Suddenly, the door between the next room and the living room opened. Though it was a bit earlier than planned, the timing couldn't be better. Henry screamed, "Ah!" and quickly turned away, fear evident in his eyes. The woman who stepped through the door smiled gracefully at the confused mother-in-law and Nora.
Nice to meet you. I'm Sarah McKnight, the daughter of the man Henry worked for at McKnight Industries 10 years ago. The big corporation?
Nora and my mother-in-law's eyes widened.
Thank you for your kindness. Oh, isn't that the company where my son currently works?
Indeed, mother-in-law. Henry, what's going on? Across from me, Henry, who had been brimming with confidence until now, was shaking like a leaf. See, this is how everything gets exposed. What's he planning to do now? I couldn't help but smirk, covering my mouth with my hand. It struck me as odd. That company not following up on the re-employment of its former employees at all. When I recently revisited the newspaper articles from back then, it turned out most employees were referred to affiliated companies or subcontractors. So, I tracked down a former colleague of Henry's, using the address from a New Year's card, and asked about what happened. It turns out,
Henry, you were fired just before the company went bankrupt. Harassing Sarah, who was an intern at the head office at the time, and infuriating the president was the cause.
Nora and my mother-in-law were stunned.
Silly, right? A 20-year-old college girl would never have an affair with a nearly 40-year-old unremarkable section manager. Too much confidence can be a problem.
Nora looked incredulously at Henry as I laughed mockingly.
Henry, you chased after a college girl? What's with that face? Of course. It's only natural for a man to seduce young, wealthy women. Got a problem with that?
Henry's brazenness made Nora and my mother-in-law gape in shock.
Wait, section manager? So, Henry, where are you working now? At my uncle's company. He's an hourly worker making $15.60 an hour, been unemployed for 10 years. I had to push him to work.
I cheerfully shared the details with Nora and my mother-in-law.
He was hired at my uncle's company through my connections. Despite the rule of working every weekday, he insisted on only working 3 days a week, so I pleaded with my uncle for him.
My mother-in-law let out a strange scream. Apparently, she hadn't heard anything from Henry. Nora, all the furniture you two took was bought with my salary. When we replaced it, Henry was a mobile game-addicted unemployed with no savings.
No way!
Nora muttered in shock.
Henry always bragged that he was supporting his wife. He complained she wasn't grateful enough.
Which mouth is saying that, huh? I glared sharply at Henry, who shrank back guiltily, unleashing all the anger I had accumulated.
While you were loafing around unemployed, I was desperately balancing work, household chores, and childcare. As if. That's what women are supposed to do. No need to brag.
Henry yelled defiantly.
And yet, you've always looked down on me, and even after being re-employed at my uncle's company, instead of being grateful to me, you went and got a mistress. How much more do you plan to mock me? Shut up. A part-timer hired through connections acting all high and mighty. And when was this?
I laughed lightly.
Right? Unfortunately for you, I'm now the executive vice president.
I informed him with a smile, and Henry froze.
What? Executive VP? Yes. I'm sorry, but I'm earning more than when you were a section manager. Don't lie. There's no way someone from a third-rate college like you could earn that much.
When I confronted Henry with the salary statement, his face twisted grotesquely before he slumped in defeat. Then, as if recovering from the shock, my mother-in-law embraced Henry's shoulder and threw a sneer at me.
A wife defying her husband, what an insolent woman. It's because of your attitude that Henry got fed up and took a mistress.
I was so fed up with dealing with them directly that I chose to ignore her remark, and my mother-in-law comforted Henry in a coddling tone.
Henry, leave these people and come back to Mama. I'll find you a suitable wife. As for an heir, you can always have one with another woman.
Yeah, I'll do that. Henry replied, glancing at Nora with an apologetic look. Nora, I'm sorry. I can't be with you because my mom doesn't approve. The moment she heard those words, Nora's expression turned fierce. She stood up abruptly, face turning red as she shouted.
I'd rather not, you lying womanizer. I thought about marrying you because you said you were a division head at a large corporation, but you turned out to be a total disappointment.
Grabbing her brand name bag, she pulled out her phone, wallet, and makeup pouch and hurled the bag at Henry.
As if I'd date a man 15 years older. Deluding yourself into thinking you're desirable, how pathetic. Nora, wait. Don't touch me.
She brushed off Henry's attempt to cling to her, stormed out with indignation. Sarah, who had been watching the whole scene, bowed to me and left as well. Here's the divorce papers. Sign them and submit them to the city hall. If it's too much trouble, use the enclosed envelope to send them back to me. I told a teary-eyed Henry, turning to my mother-in-law. Any arrangements for alimony will be made through a lawyer. We're done here, so please take him with you. I was leaving anyway. Henry, let's go back for now and come back for your things later. As I saw my mother-in-law out the door, I couldn't resist adding.
Oh, by the way, please also take care of the $160,000 debt Henry racked up from our joint account on online gaming. Since he's unemployed again, I'll be billing it to you, Mom. Thanks in advance.
My mother-in-law turned back, blinking in disbelief.
Huh? It's for his online game purchases. Since Henry is back to being unemployed, I'll be sending the bill to you, Mom. Much appreciated.
I pushed them out the door, quickly locking it behind them. The next day, the signed divorce papers were sent back to me, which I promptly submitted to the city hall. The alimony was settled without any fuss from Henry. Likely because my mother-in-law decided to cover it to hasten our separation. The furniture they had taken was also returned in good condition, much to my relief. After demanding alimony from Nora, the payment was transferred to my account, and then, surprisingly, Nora's mother brought her to my house. Prompted by her mother, Nora, though looking displeased, apologized to me. Her mother was profusely apologetic as well. The alimony her mother had covered would be repaid by Nora, who was told to juggle her job at the snack bar with another part-time job. It was good to see her parents were reasonable people. As for Henry, who I thought was getting along well with his mother, it seems their relationship has drastically soured. Back to being unemployed, Henry shows no signs of job hunting and continues to immerse himself in online gaming, squandering his mother's savings and pension.
He used to be such a sweet boy, but he's become a fool of a son because of his wife. If this goes on, all the savings will be gone. I wish he'd leave the house soon.
Apparently, she's been complaining to the neighbors. Now that I'm finally separated from Henry, I've been feeling refreshed every day. If I knew it would feel this freeing, I would have cut ties much sooner. When I informed Elijah, who is living in a college dorm, about the divorce over the phone, he responded cheerfully.
You finally made up your mind. Congratulations.
Elijah, he's still your father. If you ever want to see him, you should go.
I'd rather not see him ever again. My family is just you, Mom.
His firm statement made me laugh.
It's time for your second phase of life, Mom. Work and private life, do whatever you want without anyone holding you back? Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Encouraged by my son's supportive words, I felt my heart warm. I look forward to spending a happy life ahead, just